Can you freaking believe this?
No, I cannot.
I mean, the fire's right there. And there's people not leaving, and the fire is right here.
You see there's fire like right here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's time to stop sitting around drinking and let's go and try to save your lives, okay?
Operations, this is ladder 31.
By now, you've spent hours reliving the disaster alongside the people who experienced it.
Go ahead.
You've met them on hillsides of fire, inside burning homes, on the paths they tried to escape. You listened firsthand as they tried, in one way or another, to run from the wildfire threatening their lives. Now, it's time to meet some of the people who ran towards it.
They're on their way. We have one unit coming up the hill, the other unit's en route there.
They came from across Tennessee, from all walks of life.
The term hero extends far beyond first responders. It includes all those that gave their time, food, and energy to support everyone fighting those flames.
And went into the flames
I was here that night. That's our department. I'm proud of our department.
to try and save others.
Spencer, I'm looking at building 4,000. The roof burned off of it in the fourth floor is engulfed in flames as we speak.
These are the heroes of the Gatlinburg disaster.
Copy. I don't mean to get graphic. We could hear stuff falling around them. They advised it was getting hotter. It's probably building 4,000 if the fourth floor's on fire.
Fire rained down from the hillside beside the motel.
Like a bunch of embers falling from the sky, huge, looked like lava.
Every minute and second counts for people fleeing for their lives.
From WBIR Channel 10 in Knoxville, a series of stories where we look back at the tragedy of the Gatlinburg wildfires, what was lost, what went wrong, and how we've rebuilt since the flames. I'm Robin Wilhoit.
And I'm Madison Stacy.
Fire is really close to us. We're going to die in here.
Why did they warn us? Why did they warn us? Why did they warn us? Why did they warn us?
This is Inferno, the Gatlinburg disaster.
It was insane. That was, apparently that was our worst drought in 40 years.
Even weeks before the Gatlinburg wildfire, Glenn Corcoran, a pilot with the Tennessee Army National Guard, was battling other blazes popping up all over East Tennessee. The entire region was in the grip of a historic drought in late 2016. Thousands of acres were scorched as far south as Chattanooga. Army helicopters equipped with huge buckets crisscrossed the sky, dumping tens of thousands of gallons of water on the flames. Former 10 News reporter Rashad Hardnett reported from Hamilton County on November 11th.
Well, I'm just miles away from downtown Chattanooga, and you can see those mountains off in the distance. Pretty hazy there. We actually got a chance to see the fires up and close on an observation helicopter. Now, the observation pilots we flew with are from the Army National Guard, and they're trailing behind what are called Black Hawk helicopters. Those helicopters are dumping 700 pounds of water at a time from nearby lakes and ponds directly onto those wildfires. Meanwhile, the observation pilots are mapping out the size and the direction of the flames. The Forest Service first requested the Tennessee Army National Guard's assistance on Sunday, and every day since then, forestry officials have given them new direction on which parts of the state need aerial assistance.
The direction shifted north to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on November 27th. Corcoran and two other pilots got the call to target a wildfire burning on the Chimney Tops Trail. It had sparked days earlier.
Fire started off, as we say, very small.
That's Cassius Cash, then superintendent of the park, speaking with former 10 News reporter Becca Habiger about 4 months after the Gatlinburg disaster.
It was a creeping fire because of the thick duff that's on the park floor, right? All those years of leaf litter that builds a big mat, if you will. So that fire was burning very slowly. I think over a 2 or 3 day period, it got up to maybe five acres. So it really didn't spread until that Sunday. when the winds really came in much earlier than anticipated.
Crews dropped water on the fire using helicopters starting Sunday, Cash says.
But the helicopters were grounded once the hurricane-force winds whipped up the flames and spread them down the mountain toward Gatlinburg. People in cars and on foot, they were desperate for help to beat the fire to the bottom.
As you've learned throughout these stories, there's blame and hurt and pain that linger in the hearts of survivors 3 years later. But those people Robin mentioned remember the kindness and courage of first responders from that night. After hearing testimony now from many survivors, that's a common thread in their stories. It was like that for Linda Morrow, the woman who ran for her life down Baskins Creek Road. You met her back in episode 2.
Happily, eventually, the Tennessee State Troopers showed up, the special unit.
Trooper Stephen Barkley was part of that special unit.
I was working up in Campbell County, and I received a phone call from my strike team leader, Lieutenant Ogle, and she said that our team had been activated.
Trooper Barkley and his team rushed to Gatlinburg, not knowing what to expect. They were met by thick smoke and flames.
We received a phone call from our dispatcher stating that there was people trapped on a road called Baskins Creek. And I'm not from Sevier County, so I had no clue where that was. Lieutenant Ogle, she knew where it was, so she took us to it. We actually passed a fire. It wasn't a fire truck, but it was like a F-150 or F-350. Once we turned on that road, as soon as we turned on that road, I mean, there was homes to the left, buildings, businesses to the right that were just engulfed. We went there probably 200, 300 yards, and we had to stop. There was utility poles down, utility lines. We didn't know if they were hot or if they were not. But we could see in a distance there was vehicles that were in the road, and we heard a horn that kept going off and off and off. So we dismounted from our vehicles and we went on foot. Once we did that, we located, I don't know if it was anywhere from 6 to 9 vehicles, where people ranging from, there was a baby, all the way up to elderly people, and they were trapped. There was a big tree that had blown down or fell down, and they were trying to push it out of the road, but they were not having any success whatsoever.
Linda Morrow was one of the people desperately trying to make it down the mountain. Trooper Barkley remembers exactly the moment he saw her.
She was in a minivan. I remember there was a sliding door, and I talked with them. You could tell that they were, I don't want to say panicked, but just in a sense of shock. I mean, I think everyone was in a sense of shock that night. But she told me that she had some burns to her, I think to her left foot, or might have been her right. I'm not for sure, but either way, she said that she was in some pain. And I asked her, I said, okay, well, I identified who I was, and I told her, I said, we've got to leave, we've got to get out of here. And she didn't think that she could walk. So I knew that she was in shock, she was in pain, so I started asking her just general-based questions, trying to deter her mind, try to get her sidetracked a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, what's your name? How old are you? And I've never asked this to a lady because it's not polite, but I asked her, I said, how much do you weigh? And she told me, and I was like, okay, well, so we started getting everybody out of the van. I picked her up. I didn't do a fireman carry. I just picked her up like you would pick up a child that was asleep. And we started walking back down the road. And again, you had homes and buildings that were completely engulfed. The smoke was ridiculous. I mean, you had embers being blown from homes that were getting hit with. And I started getting tired about halfway, 3/4 way down. And I knew that every time I was stepping, it was jarring her and it was causing her to hurt. So I had to stop for a second. And I looked at her and I said, man, you lied to me how much you weigh. And she laughed. I didn't do it being disrespectful. I did it just trying to, again, to, I guess, deter her mind. And we picked her back up, and we made it all back down to our vehicles, and got her out. Whenever I become a state trooper, I knew the full job details. I mean, I've had car fires, I've had big truck fires. I've never had anything to this magnitude whatsoever. And we went back up just to make sure that any homes or any other vehicles were vacant and empty. I think the fear was almost post. We've been afterwards in the heat of the moment of it all. You just think, that that's somebody's either mom or dad or sister, brother, husband, wife, and you don't want them to be alone. You want to get to them, you want to help them and get them away from whatever the threat or the danger may be. Now afterwards, whenever you watch the videos and you see pictures, you're just like, holy cow, It was a very uneasy moment.
After the rescue, Linda started the healing process, and Trooper Barclay returned to his regular duties. But 7 months later, the two reunited.
For us in that situation, it was ground zero where we met the first time.
It had to be surreal.
It was. That was the first time that I had been back to Gatlinburg since the fires. It was really different. Where we had went, it still looked like a war zone still. I mean, they were trying to rebuild on the Strip. They had done a lot, but on your back city streets or the back roads, it still looks again like a war zone. It's almost like we were in a movie and we pressed pause once I got her to safety, and once we reunited, we just hit the play button and minus the fire. But I remembered I asked her, how she was doing, I can't remember if it was her right shoe or left shoe. I think it was her right shoe that she lost. That's where she got either second or I think it's second-degree burns on her foot. But just to see her, knowing that, I helped her get out, it was a very humbling experience. It's something that I will never, ever forget, and I'll always cherish.
Connections between first responders and the people they rescued weren't uncommon. Especially in the year after the wildfires, reunions with first responders and survivors were sometimes a vital part of the healing process. It was like that, too, for Reba Williams, the woman trapped in the elevator at Westgate. After her rescue in 2016, she met the firefighters who pulled her and her husband out of the elevator. And we've played before the 911 calls Reba made on November 28th, but those weren't the only ones made from Westgate Resort that night. Several units were on scene, assisting in the rescue. And what first responders describe seeing from the ground is harrowing.
I'm still here with you, Reba. We're updating the fire department, okay? You got multiple units coming out there to you.
Operations Command. What's your status? We're here at Westgate assisting with this elevator rescue. We just kind of wondering where the rope rescue was.
Okay, we're not up to date on which buildings are still standing up there at Westgate. She did tell us multiple times it was building 4,000. We understand now that that's on the ground. We did speak to her multiple times. We've lost contact now.
Spencer, I'm looking at building 4,000. The roof burned off of it in the fourth floor is engulfed in flames as we speak. Building 5,000 is still standing. We did a primary search of that building, found nothing.
Copy. I don't mean to get graphic. We could hear stuff falling around them. They advised it was getting hotter. It's probably building 4,000 if the 4th floor's on fire. That was where they got on the elevator. They started going down. They're not sure which floor they ended up on.
Wayne, can you give me force what you do? We're getting it, we're getting it. Command, this is Task Force 1. Go ahead for command. Yeah, we were dispatched up here at Westgate to building 4,000. We made it on scene up here, and there's several units up here advising that building's completely on the ground now, and they're just standing by. We need to return to station. Go for command. There should be other engines and stuff sitting down at the bottom of Westgate. We need them to the 4,000 building staff. We think we may have located those people. Sounds like they're still there. We're attempting to rescue this time. We just need another engine to come up, and we need plenty of water. Copy. 411. You copy direct? Yes, I copy direct. Wayne, you might want to see if we got an EMS unit that's close. Also, command, we need an EMS unit. Command copies. We're getting an EMS standby.
Severe County 9 is coming up the hill.
I've got engine 32 heading to Westgate also if you need more water, and myself, crew about 4 rehab. Engine 36 now to Westgate, code 40.
503.
Command, Seymour Squad 17. You've got 3 Jeff County trucks, 2 engines and 1 tanker, and myself headed up to you at 4,000. EMS trucks going all the way down here in front of the ladder truck, going all the way around the base. They're on their way. We have 1 unit coming up the hill, the other unit's en route there. Operations to command. Go ahead. We have located and rescued both people in the elevator in the 4,000 building. The EMS is on the scene. Copy. You have 2 EMS units on the scene. Just seeing 1 at this time. We need a second one if we can. Copy. They are en route.
Today, a couple from Birmingham, Alabama had the chance to thank the firefighters who rescued them after they were trapped for hours inside an elevator at Westgate Resort.
Their building was literally burning to the ground around them last week when firefighters found them. WBIR 10 News reporter Madison Wade shares their story.
As building after building at the Westgate Resort in Gatlinburg burned.
And this whole place is on fire.
One couple from Birmingham, Alabama was trapped in the flames inside an elevator for hours until help arrived.
I couldn't imagine being in an elevator as long as they were.
Matt Burrell is the fire chief at Andersonville Fire Department.
It was kind of chaotic. We didn't know the area.
He was one of the several firefighters sent to save Joe and Reba Williams.
Probably the longest 15 minutes of my life.
They found the Williamses inside an elevator between 2 floors, the building burning to the ground. They pried the door open and took the couple to safety.
Just kind of unbelievable for the moment, and then we got back to work.
Days went by and they heard from other people, incorrectly, that the couple died.
And then we saw on Facebook your story, I do believe, about them making it, and it pepped us right back up, and we were all happy and grateful, and thank God they made it.
And today, for the first time since their rescue, they spoke to the Williamses.
Hi, my name's Lonnie Poor.
Hi, Lonnie. Who are you?
I'm a firefighter at Andersonville Volunteer Fire Department.
Oh my goodness, and you pulled us out?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Reba Williams tells her rescuers she thought her life was over.
We had said our goodbyes to each other, and I saw Jesus in the white light, but he wasn't ready for us yet.
These firefighters were in the right place at the right time.
If it wasn't for God and the situation lining up the way it did, it could be a different outcome.
While many lives were lost that night, these two were saved.
Thank you. You guys just put your life on the line. I mean, everything was going crazy that night.
With firefighters handling multiple emergencies as fast as they could throughout the city, other units had to step up and help. The severity of the disaster necessitated that crews who had already taken a vow of service to their city needed to go above and beyond that call of duty.
911, where's your emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I'm on the spur located in between Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, Tennessee, where all the wildfires are going.
Okay.
We've got fire surrounding our vehicles right now. We need to get moved through this. We're in bumper-to-bumper traffic heading into Pigeon Forge. I was hoping you'd contact Pigeon Forge Police Department or somebody. We've got to get moving through here. There's fire everywhere.
Stay on the line. I'm going to let you talk to him. Don't hang up.
Thank you.
Downed trees weren't just a problem on Baskins Creek Road. They were a potentially fatal reality across the city. That was especially true at the Spur. It's a road connecting the town of Pigeon Forge to Gatlinburg. Fire engulfed both sides of that road, and downed trees not only trapped people trying to evacuate, it stalled emergency services who were trying to get into Gatlinburg. As they were trying to get into town to save lives, they were caught in traffic. Transportation crews worked to clear the trees, but they'd cut one, clear it off the road, and another would fall in its place. So the daunting task of clearing those roads was left to the Tennessee Department of Transportation.
I got to the Spur, which is the road between Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, and we pulled up right at the Spur coming out of Pigeon Forge, and I looked over and the whole mountainside's on fire, and that's when I realized, oh man, this is not good.
We train for emergencies. We train for clearing roads in emergencies. We train for getting roads back open when they're closed. What you don't train for is, the life or death situation, the realization that, you're in a real emergency and it's ongoing. This isn't the aftermath, this isn't the cleanup, you're right in the middle of it.
Power lines, light poles are burning. You got a tandem piece of equipment that you are driving, trying to get through under power lines and trying to get through to try to get trees out of people's way so they could get out of there. It was scary, but I knew it was something that had to be done because you're dealing with people's lives up there, so you didn't want to not do it.
Getting out of the truck to cut a tree, you'd have to walk backwards because the wind would be blowing the embers and the wood chips and everything in your eye, and you about get knocked over. The wind was so strong. I think they said it was 80-something mile per hour gusts, and I believe that.
Got out up there at one point, and it's heavy and thick, but the smell of propane was real heavy in the air, and I was kind of like, is this like this whole mountain's going to explode or something? But
I grew up in Gatlinburg, so I was definitely full of emotions besides being a little frightened.
I was expecting the worst, and when I got there, I seen some pretty bad things: buildings, cars, ambulances, police everywhere. It was chaotic. There's fire all around us. It's hot, it's smoky. Everybody's panicking, freaking out, trying to find a way. So you've got to have the courage to do what you do, and that's to move trees at any cost, any way possible.
We went on up just past Wiley Oakley, past the Gatlinburg Visitor Center, and all of a sudden we see another big tree. We saw the tree come down, and it was a big evergreen. It was a really big tree. That was when it hit me how bad the situation was. I'm standing there and I can't see 100 feet in front of me probably because of the smoke. That was as scared as I've ever been, I guess, on the job at TDOT. So, the firefighters are trying to cut the tree out of the road. They get 2 or 3 chainsaws stuck in the tree because it's flexing so much because of the way the wind's blowing. My contractor pulled up and said there was a tree down behind us. So at that point we were blocked in, had a tree down in front, had a tree down behind, and I'm trying to start my chainsaw, and I hear a horn blow or I saw flashing lights or something, and I turn around and there's the TDOT dump truck, and that was Bradley in his dump truck. And I got up on it and I said, I don't care what happens to the truck, to their plow, get the tree out of the road. We've got to get all these folks to Gatlinburg.
That was a scary moment. There was an oak tree probably 4 or 5 foot around, and I had to use my plow as a weapon to move the tree. Chainsaws was hung up. There was no other way to get around it but to use a plow truck. And it was, in my eyes, it was scary. I was scared, just like everybody else. But I done what the duty calls for.
That was Douglas Tarwater, Matt Harris, Benjamin Price, John Oakley, Terry Bradshaw, Carter Molden, and Brad Elledge with TDOT. But even first responders recognized that not all of the heroes from Gatlinburg were in uniform. Some were members of the community, thrust overnight into an impossible situation. While some people risked their own lives to save others that night, one man was at a prestigious art school trying to save the very heart and soul of Appalachia.
This was an area rich in Appalachian craft.
Bill May is the executive director at Aeromont School of the Arts. It's an art campus that's situated in the picturesque hills of Gatlinburg.
There's something almost magical about seeing people communicate and learn together and help each other and respect each other. So I always like to say that, yes, it's about objects. Yes, we're about making things, but it's really a lot more than that. It's about people learning to respect and learn from each other and work together.
When the order came for the school to evacuate on November 28th, the artists and residents, staff, and faculty were forced to leave precious and irreplaceable pieces behind.
Obviously seeing the smoke and smelling the smoke. And like everybody, I wouldn't say we were complacent, but we had no idea what was going to actually happen.
Everyone except Bill. He stayed even as the fire drew hauntingly close to Aeromont's campus. He didn't flee, he didn't panic. Instead, this English major found himself a ladder and took things, specifically a hose, into his own hands.
Central Dispatch.
Aeromont is on fire. Hughes Hall is on fire. 556 Parkway. It's about to take the whole campus if you don't get somebody up here right now.
Okay, we're updating the fire department. Okay, thank you.
Remember, May doesn't have any firefighting experience. He's not wearing protective gear, yet there he stands, watering what he can of campus down. He's one man and a measly hose against a wall of fire.
911, where's your emergency?
Aeromont School of Arts and Crafts is about to be completely burned to the ground. Just please tell me what to save. I'm the only one on campus. I'm the executive director in the main building.
At where, sir?
Door of our Aeromont School of Arts and Crafts, 556 Parkway. I've been calling for an hour and a half.
Okay, sir, everybody's been calling in Sevier County. That's the reason it's not gone through, and I apologize about that. But, okay.
The school, Aeromont, is about to be burned completely to the ground.
Okay.
Right here in the middle of Gatlinburg.
I will notify the fire chief right now. What is your name?
My name is Bill May. You can call me back on this number. I'm at the main building trying to save things.
Okay, Mr. May. I will call and let him know.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I got some hoses out that started to wet down some of the historic structures, which are primarily wood, and went up to the artist in residence studio, got a ladder and a hose, and tried to wet down the roof so that maybe the fire wouldn't leap over to the roof. And then I saw a glow up at the far end of campus, so I got in my car and drove up to the end of campus where we had our maintenance shed and our two of our largest and newest dormitories. And when I got there, to my horror, the maintenance shed was completely destroyed, completely burned down, and one of the dormitories was completely engulfed, and the fire had already begun to spread to the other dormitory building. at that point, I realized that there wasn't my fire hoses, my Don Quixote tilting at windmills wasn't going to change anything. Finally, just dawned on me that there wasn't. Who was I to? And it was futile. I mean, in other words, I could say this, I could say that, I could load. How many things can you load in your car? And what do you choose? What do you pick when you're faced with that? So I finally just, I quit pulling things. I had a big pile on the floor, and I finally just, sat down next to the pile and started to cry.
It's only once his wife calls him to say that their own home was under a mandatory evacuation that he leaves the campus to the flames' mercy.
The school is as a living thing, and it lives in the context of a culture and the context of community. Feeling like there obviously wasn't a little overwhelmed, and whatever was going to happen was going to happen.
Before daylight even has a chance to break through the treetops the next day, Bill May is winding through the mountains' hills, through checkpoints and road blockages, back to Aramont's campus.
So I was able to get back on campus. It was still dark, and I drove into campus and not knowing what I would find. And as my headlights, as I drove through campus, my headlights would, hit buildings. And I just took a sort of to myself an inventory. This still stands. This survived. This building survived. The Red Barn, the Wood Studio, the staff house, and then finally I got up to the end, and there was the Red Barn, and it was still standing.
The buildings he risked his life to save were spared.
The question is, so why did I stay?
Right.
Well, it's not really by any means what I would consider an act of heroism. I think, when you've committed yourself to something, and you're faced with something like this, a real threat, I just concentrated on, was there anything that I could do to save things, to make things better. Very emotional for me, obviously. This school means a lot to me.
Once the citizens of Gatlinburg were able to evacuate to places of safety, there was little they could do but wait and watch as the fire did what it wanted with their home. Will our houses be intact, they wondered. Would Dollywood be destroyed? What about downtown? Would anything be left? One of the places that sparked the most panic, though, was Ripley's Aquarium of the Smokies.
Ripley's Aquarium also in the line of threat tonight. Much of Gatlinburg under evacuation.
Many folks have been concerned about the animals at Ripley's Aquarium. There are 11,000 animals in that aquarium, some of them endangered species.
Into the night, flames inched closer and closer as the animals inside swam away in their tanks, unaware of the danger. Their caretakers waited until the absolute last second and were forced to leave them all behind.
So they're hoping they're protected. They were evacuated last night. The workers had such a hard time leaving their beloved animals.
We spoke with Ryan DeSears earlier tonight with Ripley's Aquarium. He's joining us once again.
Well, there's no good news. That's the best way to put it.
The imagery was so bad, we were like, it's just going to be wiped out. And we were waiting for that, and it was like, oh, that's going to be too bad.
The danger that those animals faced is something that sticks with John North.
Because you have innocent, unprotected life, and nothing can be done to save it. That's kind of what I was going through my mind was, what a shame if something happens to that aquarium, because there is nothing that anybody can do to save those animals, and they didn't move there themselves. That's where they live.
And we're going to continue to work on an update with the general manager of Ripley's. We talked to him early this morning.
And I was probably the first citizen back in the city. If not the first, I was darn near it.
That general manager was Ryan DeSear. He's worked at the aquarium for 25 years. Like thousands of others, DeSear evacuated the city with his wife and son the night of the fires. But unlike everybody else, he makes his way back into the city of Gatlinburg at 5 o'clock early that next morning.
We were blessed by rain at about 2 o'clock that morning. And if that rain hadn't come, I don't know what would have happened. But we were getting horrible reports out of the city. The school had burnt down. This had happened. That had happened. A lot of it was wrong, as happens in chaos. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I had an aquarium vehicle, and I went back in, and there was roadblocks set up everywhere.
He makes his way through the charred and apocalyptic city.
It was surreal. There was fires everywhere, smoke all over.
Where he sees, right before his eyes, a still-standing Ripley's Aquarium of the Smokies.
It'll bring tears to your eyes. It was like Scarlett O'Hara seeing Tara. I mean, it really was.
The aquarium, every shark and turtle and penguin inside, survived. They didn't lose a single animal. The fire made a clean path for Ripley's, but ended up hitting the aquarium's massive concrete parking deck, and that acted as a fire barrier. The flames rolled off the sides. So when Ryan gets there, the joy of seeing the aquarium still intact is tempered by these pockets of fire, which he works with a crew to put out.
We got fire extinguishers out. We were putting out small fires all around the exterior of the building. What had happened to us with that roaring fire coming down Greystone Heights was that the parking deck behind the aquarium had acted as a fire break. It's a big concrete, brutal-esque structure. It had acted as a fire break, and the fire hit it and rolled around at the sides, avoiding the aquarium. And we were putting out those small fires that had rolled around the sides there. And as you can imagine, alarms going off everywhere, dead silence in most places, explosions in areas.
In talking to people, there's kind of a collective sense of it didn't get the aquarium.
Right.
Not only, it wasn't even really just a symbol of a sanctuary, it was.
It was a sanctuary.
In the weeks after the wildfires, Ripley's also became a staging area for different emergency services. They had one working phone, showers, ventilated filters that made the air breathable. In those weeks, the aquarium turned from an oasis for animals into one for first responders.
And we had a huge area set up for first responders to come in, get dry sock, get the Visine, get new clothes, and then go back out, do an 8-hour shift, come back, get a hot meal, sleep there, whatever they needed to do. The aquarium's a perfect building for that. There was no question about that. I mean, the air was clean on the inside, and if you were a fireman and you had been out in hell battling a fire for 8 hours, and you came in and you got a piece of our meatloaf and you got some dry socks, and you could sit there and watch our sea turtle for the next hour. That's good. That's a pure good. And there's very few pure goods in this world, right? But seeing a sea turtle swim by you when you've been through so much, that's a pure good. And just take a moment and just relax and enjoy it. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and it's not a fault issue, it's not in anything, it's just sometimes it happens. It's the reality of life.
His family had planned a vacation for December, a cruise, but they push it back after the fires. He can't leave, 10% of his staff doesn't even have a home, so he stays, helps, and they push their vacation back to early January. No big deal. The family, Ryan, his wife, son, and mother-in-law, fly out of Knoxville, and they get off at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport in South Florida.
And you think this disaster is going to be the worst until the next one hits.
For Ryan and his family, the next one was just weeks away. And instead of flames, it involved gunshots.
Well, I can hear the percussions of the gunfire. The authorities have had a panic situation here today.
Pop, 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 pop. They're grabbing luggage when Ryan locks eyes with a young man who pulls a pistol from his waistband and starts killing people.
Friday afternoon, authorities say an airline passenger named Esteban Santiago arrived at Fort Lauderdale's airport, retrieved a gun from checked luggage, and started shooting, killing multiple people in a baggage claim area and injuring others.
And then a herd of people just started running down the way and trampling over people.
We had the distinction of being in the first mass shooting of 2017. That was the distinction. And you can't believe it when that happens to you. You're just sitting there like everybody. You're on your phone. You're waiting for your luggage to come out. Everybody does the same thing, right? Our luggage carousel happened to be in a corner of the airport in Fort Lauderdale. And you hear something that sounds like a firework. I turned around. I see a young man coming at us with a handgun. He's firing at everybody in his path. It's kind of surreal. And you just never think it's going to happen to you until it does. And so the first thing that happens is you just hit the deck. You just go down, right? Luckily, we had one piece of luggage had come off, and my wife and mother-in-law hid behind that. I dove down behind a smart cart thing, and I kept thinking, if I could get my son, if I could find my son, I could pick him up and I could throw him through the luggage flaps.
It was his son's 12th birthday.
Because there was nowhere to run. We were in a corner. I said, but if I could find him, I couldn't find him anywhere. And this guy's he's killing people right and left. I mean, it was awful. The lady, older lady, within a few feet of me, she took a bullet. And her husband, who's an older gentleman, I learned later they're celebrating their 60th anniversary for a cruise. I think he had a small chance to say goodbye to her before she passed. She was maybe 90. So, this is a month after the fire. You have this incident, 2 unreal incidents within a month. Your system starts, it's too much, And you try to just get through it as best you can, right? We were in that airport. They thought there was more shooters. They thought maybe somebody on our flight was in cahoots with this guy and he was enraged. And I think he killed 5 and wounded many others. And they were all around us in a circle. It just happened right there. So, you see all these kind of folks that were doing nothing but going on vacation. That's all they were. That's their crime. They were going on vacation and got shot.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did the mode that you were in Gatlinburg, in that chaos, was it like a switch?
I was perfectly calm in both situations. I have more emotion now than I did then. I was a good witness for them because I saw everything. In the case of the airport shooting, I saw everything. I videoed everything. I could perfectly describe what happened. I had been through the Gatlinburg fire, and I'd been through the same thing. I think what I was thinking was, what have I done wrong in life to deserve this? And then you think, maybe I've done a lot right. I've survived both. You think both ways, and I think, okay, I'll never be in another mass shooting. I said, the odds of it happening again now are, being struck by lightning twice, right? So that was my thinking after that. But we were all just so exhausted and distraught. And I don't know how to explain it. You've got post-traumatic stress and you don't even know it at that point. It was an awful experience in every way. The fire wasn't personal. The shooting was personal. And this is a man purposely trying to kill us. The fire was just a fire. It does what a fire does, but a madman with a gun is a whole different ballgame. It's very personal, and it happened to my son. I couldn't protect him from it.
Those experiences, the Gatlinburg wildfire and the Florida mass shooting, changed Ryan forever. If he goes to a restaurant, he doesn't sit at booths because you can flip a table over and hide if a shooter walks in. But he also never leaves the house without a charger. When he fled Gatlinburg, everyone brought a phone, but no charger. It also changed how he places blame when disaster, whether that's personal or communal, strikes, because he saw how even people who build entire careers learning how to navigate disaster situations can't quell the chaos.
We all process things differently, right? It's just the way it is, and nobody should ever make fun of somebody else's grief or stress or any of it, You see people and you want to get upset with them. Well, you didn't lose your house in the fire, but you're claiming you got PTSD. Well, who am I to say that? Maybe they do. Maybe they were trapped by burning trees and didn't know what to do. It was a horrible deal, right? So you got to develop an empathy for folks like that.
And it kind of sounds like your reaction, since both of these things. One is a very, like you said, a personal trauma.
Yeah.
And the other one is a very sort of collective
Exactly
trauma.
right. Exactly.
And it seems like your response has been to kind of validate every response that people can have.
Yeah.
You kind of see the very
I do.
ways
I see the fire bothered me from a human standpoint. I saw the devastation it caused to my fellow people, my citizens, the people I've grown up with, and I felt for them horribly. It didn't bother me particularly. My life was affected only in as much that my business was affected because it was shut down and the people around me were affected, but I got lucky. My house didn't burn, and I was the guy in control of that situation. I could control things. The shooting was personable and out of my control. There was nothing I could do. There's nowhere I could run, nowhere I could hide. You know, they tell you run, hide, fight. It's fight. A lot harder to fight when somebody's got a gun pointed to your head. You know, it's easy to say. It's a whole, when you're in the situation, you drop to the ground and you start crawling.
When faced with disaster, to Ryan, people aren't heroes or villains. They're just human. We act how we act. We escape or we don't. And we can't go on with our lives pretending as if nothing happened. We can only rise up and get through it the best we can.
Like all people, you want to be in control of everything you do. And the reality of it is there's times in your life when you're not. And all you can do is the best possible thing in every decision you can. And sometimes that decision's not a good one. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it impacts a lot of lives. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you just do the best you can. You know, I wish I was a robot and I could go back and say I make every decision based on a calculation that it's going to be the 99% best efficient. You know, but humans don't do that.
And in the immediate aftermath of the fires, the whole community of Gatlinburg would come together to rebuild, as Ryan said, the best they could. Glenn Corcoran and his team surveyed the damage from the air.
The problem was the cell towers were down. There was like minimal cell coverage on anything.
Communications down. That was one challenge. Finding precious water to fill their buckets. That was another challenge. There just weren't many large bodies of water nearby.
But we ended up finding there was a member in the community that had a pond out there in his yard, and we started pulling out of that. And again, shout out to that guy because he was an awesome member of the community there. He had garden hoses pouring into his pond. It's foundations of homes burnt to the ground, one after another. And it's getting really disheartening really quick as more as we're going back and forth, tell me there's something we can save in here. And, I mean, neighborhoods just leveled. And, my boss calls back for a situation report, and I'm like, it looks like Taji, Iraq. I remember when we rolled in there for the first time, and it was the home of the Republican Guard. And these barracks are just in rubble, and I'm like, somebody didn't like somebody down here, man, because this place is gone. And they're like, yeah, that was Saddam's Republican Guard. And that's what this looked like. It was burning, there was smoke everywhere, and just nothing left but timbers. My boss and I find a house, and it's trying to light up, but it's doing okay. The one next to it is burning. It's just burning it to the ground. And so I'm like, all right, if we can get this guy knocked out, the one that's burning, we keep this guy's house alive. So we start dumping on it, and meanwhile I get a call from the operations center to say, hey, you got to move to this 911 house right now. I'm like, well, we've got one. And so on when we found it, they're like, nope, new one. So we punch in what they're calling for, got my iPad, we're, 3,000 feet, you'd think we'd have service, and we're flying into what it's telling us to do. My boss takes, I'm losing everything. My boss takes it on his, and we fly out in the middle of Gatlinburg. It's like, there's nothing out here, and he's like, wait a minute, you're not going to believe this. We turn around, and we're flying right back to the house that we left, that we'd found. And it was because, again, the cell communication, the fact that things aren't getting relayed, it was just a mess. And so
Corcoran has no idea how many homes he saved. He was on a mission, and it was personal.
You can do this overseas, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, whatever, okay? And you can somewhat disassociate because you're, in combat, bad guys, got it, there's good out here too, but, it's not your backyard. This is now your backyard. These are your neighbors. I mean, this is your community. And so now you're doing this with almost a tear in your eye of like, oh my gosh, and there's a whole new sense of urgency, which in itself can be very dangerous to you as a pilot, because you can get emotionally involved in what it is you're doing and tend to do things that you maybe wouldn't do on a normal basis. So you have to kind of weigh all these things in your head of like, all right, got it. I feel bad for these guys. This is really a bad thing, but I still need to be extremely cautious of what I'm doing because I'm flying a machine that...
There were some houses, I noticed we got closer down here, that were burnable.
A year after the fire, 10 News anchor John Becker loaded up into Corcoran's helicopter to get a bird's eye view.
Flying about 2,000 feet above Gatlinburg, Corcoran calls on his fellow pilots to descend toward a stand of trees to see if a house with a green roof he tried to save survived the flames.
So we were having to come in here, sneak around these trees to try to drop down to get underneath that porch.
So what's it like to see it today?
It was pretty good.
Now, 3 years later, Corcoran's flying days are behind him. New homes are on those scorched foundations. Charred businesses are rebuilt and thriving. And tourists, record numbers of them, are back.
But even more so is the fact that the community growth, the fact that people were building again. I mean, hotels that were like wiped out, people were building back up. We've been in there since then where it's almost like, in some regards, because I think, there's some scarring that's never going to go away, both physically for the mountain, as long as, as well as emotionally, spiritually, and everything else. I mean, just the fact that this has gone through here. But, again, this is the volunteer spirit. This is our community. I mean, look at, just what Dolly Parton alone did.
These are my mountains, my valleys, these are my rivers.
It was the most heartbreaking, sickening, scary. It's just, you can't describe the feeling. Well, I freaked out because they were telling me the Smoky Mountains were burning. I was on tour, and we were on stage. When I got off stage, they said, the Smoky Mountains are burning down. And I thought, what are you talking about? My home in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee is someplace special. But wildfires have affected many of the people, my people, who live in those beautiful mountains.
In the days after her theme park was barely spared from the flames, Dolly Parton put her words of support into action. She helped the people living in her Tennessee mountain home get back on their feet.
These are my mountains, this is my home.
But how did they do it? That's next time. Final episode of Inferno.
Inferno is a podcast from WBIR Channel 10, a Tegna company. This episode was written and hosted by Robin Wilhoit and Madison Stacy. Editing by Brian Holt and Madison Stacy. Executive producers Allison Duff, Tanya Burke, Lauren Hoare, Jeremy Campbell, and Madison Stacy. Associate producers Katie Pilippo and Daniel Bignot. Original reporting contributed by Rashad Hardnett, Michael Crow, Leslie Ackerson, and John Becker. For more on Gatlinburg's loss and recovery, and to hear extra audio that didn't make it into the show, visit the Interactive Inferno page at WBIR.com/Inferno Podcast.
And we'd like to give a special thanks to the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Portions of their own documentary called The Gatlinburg Wildfires, the T-Dot story, was used in this episode. For the full video, head to T-Dot News on their YouTube page.